Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to Emerson Unitarian Universalist Congregation. My name is the Reverend Ed Prue and I am the minister here. I am so happy to have all of you here, and the family is very happy to have all of you here on this very important day in the life of this family and on this very important day in the life of this congregation. In Unitarian Universalist churches, we start our service by signifying an entry into sacred space and sacred time by lighting our chalice. I would now like to invite Charlie and Chris, who are Ken's grandsons, to light our chalice for us. We light our chalice on Sundays to symbolize the strength of this community, the strength of the spirit of this community, and the strength of the love of this community. We light our chalice here today to symbolize, again, the strength of this community, but on this day, we light our chalice to symbolize the strength of this family and the strength of this time that they are going through and the love that they are experiencing during this time that they are going through. We are here today because our friend, our husband, our father, our grandfather, our stepfather, our uncle, our great-uncle, our cousin, and our member here at Emerson, Ken Vincent, has died. We light this chalice and we celebrate here together the life of Ken Vincent in the hope that this light that we shed together will light his way to becoming an ancestor. Now, we ask you, so Ken planned out this whole service for us. The elements here were all planned out, and Ken would like us to read this poem together, this prayer together. So I would ask you to take your order of service, and it is printed on the inside cover of your order of service. It is a reading from the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Hearts with the light of love illuminated well, whether in mosque or synagogue they dwell, have their names written in the book of love, unvexed by hopes of fears of hell. Pagodas, just as mosques are homes of prayer, 'tis prayer that church bells chime into the air. Yea, church and Kaaba, rosary and cross are all but diverse tongues of worldwide prayer. Although the creeds number some 73, I hold with none but that of loving thee. What matter faith, unfaith, obedience, sin? Thou art all we need. The rest is vanity. And now I would like to invite Ken's grandniece, Claire Hendricks Burris, to present some readings from the Hebrew Bible and from the New Testament.
Jesus said, "Now he is not God of the dead, but to the living, for to him all of them are alive." He said, "I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. And I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself." In the parable of the lost sheep, Jesus tells us that God will not give up on us until we are all safely home. And at the beginning of the Lord's Prayer, Our Father, Jesus tells us that his Father and our Father are the same. From the Epistle to the Hebrews, "This is the covenant that I will make with them after those days, says the Lord. I will put my laws in their hearts, and will write them on their minds. I will remember their sins and their lawless deed no more. The book of Isaiah reads, "The Lord all-powerful will prepare a feast on this mountain for all people. It will be a feast with all the best food and wine, the finest meat and wine. On this mountain, God will destroy the veil that covers all nations, the veil that stretches over all peoples. He will destroy death forever. The Lord God will wipe away every tear from every face. He will take away the shame of his people from the earth. The Lord has spoken." These readings from the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament tell us a consistent story. Death is not a definitive end to life, and in the afterlife, all are equal. While we may grieve the loss of a loved one, our separation from them is only temporary. May we all find comfort in this reassurance as we remember our dear Ken Vincent today and in all days to come.
We now will have a special musical presentation from Clark and Ian and Philip.
So this song is about the light, that light, that light, this light, that light. We're going to sing the first three verses of this alone, but we'd like you to join in with us and repeat the first verse at the end when you hear it coming around on the guitar. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up the world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up the world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up the world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
As I mentioned, Ken selected all of the readings for this service. I would now like to invite Kai Dodiwala to deliver readings from the Zoroaster. Kai?
Thank you, Reverend. Good afternoon. The reading is from Yasna 28 of the Gathas, verses 1 and 2. With uplifted hands and deep humility, I beseech, O God, first and foremost, the abiding joy of your Holy Spirit. Grant that I perform all actions in harmony with righteousness, and acquire the wisdom of the good mind, so that I may bring happiness to the soul of the universe. O God, may I reach you in fullness of knowledge through the good mind, to be graced with realization of both the selves, the physical lower self and the spiritual higher self, which comes from following your divine law, through which all devotees into the abode of light. Thank you.
In Unitarian Universalist churches, it is our tradition to hear what I call testimonies, but other people call eulogies. Testimonies or eulogies of the person whose life we are celebrating here today. So we have two such testimonies this morning. The first, I would like to invite Ken's stepson, Clark, to come and deliver his testimony this morning.
So we've already noted Ken planned everything that you're hearing and seeing here today. He left a little book with everything in it because he wanted to prepare us for this day. It was very important to him. Everything you're experiencing was written by him. He chose the readings and the music to help bring us along on his spiritual journey. And under the topic of eulogy, he simply put, "Surprise me." So I hope I don't surprise him too much. He also suggested that we do this service here at Emerson Church. And it's fitting and proper that we do this since there have been so many important events in his life and the life of his family that occurred on these grounds. Last time that Ken, our junior, and I spoke at this pulpit, we were graduating from high school, culminating in our religious education that took place in the building, which is now that wonderful new structure back there. So I want to thank Reverend Pro and his staff for welcoming us back here today. I want to thank the congregation and the volunteers of this church who work so hard to keep it going with their time and tithe so that we can be here today to experience in the present a place so deeply in our hearts and in our memories, and to provide a home where his remains can rest with so many dear friends. It was back in the heady days of the early 90s that Ken Vincent was one of the people that made this church run. He was on the worship committee, and as such, from time to time, he was required to provide sermons and programming when the ministers were on vacation. It was after one such sermon on the developmental revelation that my mother approached him after the service and said, "That really helped me understand the people I work with every day." Ken did his due diligence, and after investigating her relationship status, the next week he asked her out. And after that moment, her life, and by proxy, my life, would change dramatically for the better. I would meet Ken that summer of '93 at my graduation in San Antonio, and 6 months later, they would be married. It would have been sooner, but Ken was a psychologist, and he knew that statistically, people who wait greater than 6 months before getting married have a better chance of staying together. It happened right here on this dais here. Ken Jr. and I stood there next to them in ill-fitting ties, and without knowing it at the time, we became brothers. Pam and Ken shared a wonderful life together. They socialized with friends from the university, from this church, and from Covenant Church, and from the Society of Contemporary Theology and the Zoroastrian community. They traveled together, always making sure to visit the Unitarian churches and the cats and all the cool cars in every little town. They went to San Antonio and Galveston a lot. These are places where Ken grew up that were really special to him. Ken wrote amazing books about his intellectual and spiritual passions. He asked my mother to be his editor, and together they promoted his work at book signings and seminars. They went to all the Unitarian churches and the fellowships in the region, and Ken would preach in simple language and with great humor. And if you were lucky, he had this overhead projector with transparencies that explained it all. He would try to educate and to inspire people about our ancient ties to the Zoroastrian religion and to the universality of all religions and to the direct experience of the divine by ordinary people. My mom would play her flute and do the readings and create artwork for the services. They were partners. More importantly, they were best friends. But even more importantly, he just plain loved her. He was patient and kind. He thanked her for everything. He called her Angel. Now, stepmothers and stepfathers get a bad rap in Disney movies that Ken liked to watch. But as a child of divorced parents, I can tell you there's no better feeling than seeing your parents remarried to people that they truly love and who truly love them in return. But what was better than that was that he acted the same way towards me and my wife and my kids. He drew these wonderful little anthropomorphic cats that were supposed to represent himself and my mom. There are dozens of them. They showed up on all kinds of homemade cards at every birthday and anniversary, and eventually they got their own book, which is still on my child's shelf. Now, after a while, the family tree expanded to include little Ken and Virginia and Christopher and Charlie and myself and Veronique and Philip and Ian. And you have to understand, nearly all these cats looked exactly the same, except each one would have some little detail that made each of us recognizable as individuals, something special. And that's how you knew he felt about all of us, that you were special, that he saw the best part of you. He would tell me, you, your boys, your wife, they're so amazing. It was such a compliment when he said that being with us on Christmas was like being in one of those Hollywood musicals he used to love to watch, where it's a show and everybody breaks out in song. I feel so lucky that my boys were able to know him and spend time with him, playing at his house, playing with the Magi from the big glass case, watching the Kitten Bowl, watching old movies. I feel so lucky we were able to see him every Sunday for lunch these last several years and hear all the amazing stories that span between West Texas and Mesopotamia and everywhere in between. I will deeply miss him. The way he laughed, the way he talked with his hands and changed the tone of his voice a little further down when he was about to say something really quotable. The way that even after 2 brandies, he could still articulate the essence of any subject with eloquence and humor. The way he took joy in the simple things in life. And since I know you're watching, Ken, thank you. Thank you for all of it. Maybe all be so fortunate as to live by your example. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we invite Ken, Dr. Ken, to come and address.
All right, long-winded father, long-winded son, y'all get comfortable. Phones down. Can you not? You can't? Can you hear me? All right. My dad, Dr. Kenneth Ray Vincent, was born on August 20th, 1943, into a world at war. He grew up in San Antonio, Texas, in the 1940s and 50s. One of his earliest memories was crying when he heard over the radio that Hank Williams had died. While my dad grew up in San Antonio, he came of age at our family's ranch in Spofford, Texas, on the Mexican border. This was what my dad called a simpler, more natural time where he could spend his days riding horses, climbing on rail cars, and roaming the family land where my grandfather had pretended to hide out from Pancho Villa during his childhood. The impression that the ranch made on my dad was permanent. He never lost his connection to the land, and he never stopped thinking of us as a ranching family. When Dad turned 16, he fell into a close group of friends that he called his gang. They spent their high school and college years cruising up and down Long Point, surfing in Galveston, and dancing to rock and roll music. Like me and my younger son, Charles, his favorite was Chuck Berry. Dad went on to finish the University of Houston with a degree in psychology and spent the 1960s as a counselor. In 1973, he finished a doctorate in psychology at the University of Northern Colorado. And after a decade in private practice, which he hated, in 1986, Dad took a job leading the Diagnostic Learning Center at the University of Houston. After working there for a while, he spent the final decade of his career teaching at Houston Community College until he retired in 2001. During Dad's time at HCC, he began a journey of inquiry focused on the afterlife, world religions, Christian universalism, and religious experience that would continue to the day he died. Even as his health failed, he maintained a full life of the mind and meaningful relationships with his friends and family. He was an outstanding, if not entirely appropriate, grandfather, passing his love of Disney comics to my older son, Christopher. He never stopped being there for me. We rarely went more than a week without talking. His was a good life, well lived. For my tribute today, I want to reflect on three aspects of my dad's life: his public service, his parenting, and his relationship with God. Dad began his career in psychology as a counselor with the Texas Employment Commission. His role there, as part of President Johnson's war on poverty, was to place people in jobs. Dad always said that helping people find work was one of the most rewarding things he was ever able to do. He took this job after the 1964 Civil Rights Act was passed. Incidentally, it turned 60 years old yesterday. This law outlawed discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. The gravity of his mission could not be overstated. Dad helped ensure that race could not be used as a selection criteria for employment. With the full might of the United States government behind him, he made clear that the workplace was no longer segregated. The message of his work was simple, yet profound. You will not deny my fellow citizens the fruit of their hands for the color of their skin. Being raised by a civil rights worker had an unmistakable impact on my upbringing. Growing up, when some problem in the world seemed impossible to solve, or I found myself wallowing in cynicism, my dad would put his hand on my shoulder and say, I don't think you understand. When I was a child, black people couldn't drink out of the same water fountain as me. Don't tell me you can't change the world. I'll try. When Dad embarked on an academic career in the 1980s, he was back at public service. His most impactful scholarly article, 99 sites on Google Scholar this morning, was entitled Black-White IQ Differences. Does age make the difference? In this article, he challenges the notion that race can explain measured differences in the intelligence of children. Rigorous analysis of the data now confirmed what we accept as truth. Black people are not intellectually inferior. For Dad, research wasn't about petty fights with other smart people. It was about building an edifice of knowledge that made the world a better place. At HCC, teaching became the predominant focus of his professional life. He helped countless people grab the bootstraps there en route to a vocational credential or further education. His teaching philosophy was simple. If you know the material and you care about the students, you'll be fine. These words served as my counsel when I taught a university course for the first time this year. In the acknowledgments section of my dissertation, kids, don't write a dissertation, Dad got the following tribute. My father, Dr. Kenneth R. Vincent, lent me unwavering support throughout this process. More importantly, he has never stopped believing that the Academy is an institution that can motivate social change and improve students' lives. It is because of him that I will refuse to abandon this outlook. Across all of his pursuits, Dad just thought to move the line just a little bit in the right direction. Dad was also a loving and dedicated parent. I should note, what many of you all know already, he was unconventional. So I attended an Episcopal elementary school where you went to chapel every week. The week of your birthday, you got to go up to chapel, and the minister would ask you questions about the service in chapel that day. One year at my birthday, I went up in front of the chapel, and the minister looked at me and said, Ken, what is some advice that you've received from your parents? And I said, stay out of bars. If only this advice had landed. Dad didn't always fit the mold, but he was always there. So many of the lessons that I learned from him guide me to this day. So today, for this service, I'm going to walk through the top 5 pieces of advice that my dad ever gave me. Number 5, don't complain, don't explain. So sometimes a conversation just needs to close. Notwithstanding everything you might want to say, nothing else is necessary. It's over. And so for any of y'all that have been surprised to hear me stop talking at a given point, thank Dad. Number 4, become skilled at the art of the genuine compliment. This is so easy and so good. Y'all, there is something wonderful about everyone. Just find it and say it. Number 3, marriage is about who you want to watch TV with on a Tuesday night. One of my dad's great accomplishments was sustaining a truly happy marriage. Beyond this, he supported Virginia and I even before we were an item. As our relationship progressed, Dad made clear to me that a lasting partnership is about the everyday. Mine has been fantastic. I can't wait to start season 3 of The Bear next week, Lovey. Number 2, happiness isn't having what you want. It's wanting what you have. The 80 years that we're celebrating today were a treasure because they were happy ones. My dad found joy in so many simple things. If we could all love the good things in our life as much as Dad loved Lone Star and Disney movies and his library card, the world would be a far better place. This was my senior quote. My favorite piece of wisdom that Dad left me should resonate with folks who have been through a bad breakup. It should resonate with Cubs and Red Sox fans. And hopefully, it'll resonate on days like today when our hearts are a little bit broken. Nothing is permanent but God. The more that I follow this advice, the better my life gets. I spent so many years wondering about what was going to end and what was next. The more I'm able to sit back and say, I got to do that. That was cool. That season is over, but it was awesome. I'm glad I got to do it. The more I'm able to embrace this, the more I'm able to be at peace and live in the moment. This is not a skill that comes naturally to me, so I'm very grateful. So let's talk about my dad's relationship with God. Dad arrived at Baylor University in 1961, a curious Methodist, and he left Baylor a year later, a committed Unitarian. Baylor was thrilled. In his religion classes in college, he discovered the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam and the hymns of Zoroaster and so many great lessons from the Bible. No matter what Dad was doing professionally, his journey with religion was central to his life. When my parents divorced in 1992, research on religion and the community provided by this church became his anchors. It was here that he met my stepmother, Pam, who would become his best friend and first editor. Y'all, I should note, in the foyer outside, there is a collage of 70 pictures that my dad made for his 70th birthday. There's also a second frame with 10 pictures that he added to mark his 80th birthday. The only reason that we were able to enjoy Dad for another 10 years is my stepmom, who kept him going even as his health failed him. Pam, for this I will always be grateful. Dad published his first book on religious experience in 1994, focused on the afterlife, and he would spend the next 3 decades researching religion and spiritual experience. His next book focused on Zoroastrianism and its role in the origins of Christianity. Countless articles and sermons and meetings of the Foundation for Contemporary Theology followed. This was a great passion of his life, and my stepmother shared it with him wholly. The core of his pursuit never strayed from what he called the golden thread: his belief that God loves all of us and that the afterlife is destined to be beautiful for everybody. Me, I never really got it. I went to church to meet girls. I tell people, though, I am churched and I am a believer, but I am not religious. But looking around this room, I am absolutely certain that Dad would be so happy to see such a diverse group of people come together from different faith traditions and backgrounds. He always sought to build interfaith community. I think that all of us in this interfaith community of people who love Dr. V, I think we can all agree that this dreamer, who never stopped loving Disney and who always answered my calls, is finally getting answers to all the questions that captivated him for a lifetime. I say this with all the love, Dad. Ace.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Clark. We welcome your words and we hear them. Beautiful relationship with your father and your stepfather. Thank you for sharing. The next part of this service needs a tiny bit of explanation because we're going to sing a hymn together. And the hymn that we're going to sing together is a familiar hymn that you are aware of, but you might find odd singing it in July. We're going to sing We Three Kings, which is in your gray hymnals. If you can see, the folks sitting in the front row may have to share. I don't know if there's enough there. But Ken asked us to sing this because in Ken's research on Zoroastrianism and the link between Zoroastrianism and early Christianity, these three kings in the Nativity story were most likely Zoroastrian priests. And Ken had a large collection of three wise men figurines and artistic renderings. So this hymn normally comes out for the Epiphany, right? It's the giving of the gifts to Jesus. We are going to sing now. So we would like Susie to come and lead us. And if you would, you can stand or you can stay seated, whatever makes you more comfortable, just help us sing this hymn for Ken and for Ken's family.
Falls and all about to falling
Thank you. You can sit. As we come to the end of our service, the family would like to invite you to join us in our gathering space for coffee and conversation, and to begin the work of living in a world where there is no Ken. And this is the work we do together as a family. This is the work we do together as a congregation. And this is the work we do together as friends. And we invite you to do that work with us directly after this service. And we appreciate you being here. We appreciate everyone who attended remotely via the internet. We hope that you have found rest and solace in this service and joy in the celebration of this beautiful life. And now, as we did at the beginning of our service, we would like to extinguish our chalice. So if Chris and Charlie could come up and extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this chalice. Thank you, guys. We extinguish this chalice in the hope that the light that this chalice had is carried with us in our hearts as we leave this place together and as we begin the work of living in a world without Ken in it. And now I invite Pam to play our postlude.
Made him purr.
Folks, to allow the family to leave the room first and follow.